Okay, so to continue on with our stress first aid part 3, we'll go through some other housekeeping items. There will be more information for how to get CE credit at the end after you do the evaluation as well. So don't worry, all of that information is listed at the survey at the end so that you can click those links and get to them. So, okay, we can go to.
Hello, I'm Dan Raina, a medical oncologist.
Oops, just a second. Okay, sorry about that. I had something else was playing in the background. So this is the last of our 3 sessions. And as we had discussed before, there's a total of 6 hours of CE for all 3 sessions. And go to the next slide, Dr. Paul.
Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Call, and the workshop purpose today is to introduce you to a strategy designed to provide assistance enhancing emotional and behavioral health to people in crisis. One of the sponsors of this training is SRT Incorporated, an Oklahoma nonprofit corporation, and the Housing Authority for the Oklahoma Medical Reserve Corps Stress Response Team. My name is John Call. I'm the unit coordinator. For those of you who don't know me, just briefly, my background is I have a PhD in clinical psychology. I'm board certified as a forensic psychologist. I'm also an attorney and a member of the Oklahoma Bar, and trained as a emergency medical technician. The first part of this training will be similar to the part 1 and part 2, and the reason being is that we figure that there's going to be some new people showing up, and we need to provide them with an introduction. But also, I think it's helpful for all of us to review the basics of SFA before we get into the last 2 core actions. To begin with, though, I want to talk about just briefly profiling COVID-19. As a forensic psychologist, I spent a great deal of my career profiling criminal behavior. And I found, frankly, that there are different types of crises and different types of disasters impact communities and individuals differently. A pandemic is a prolonged, diffuse disaster. Compare that and contrast that with a tornado, which is a acute, localized disaster that happens, let's say, in Moore, Oklahoma. But when those tornadoes hit Moore, Oklahoma in 2013, Edmond was where I live, was unaffected directly. But a pandemic is quite opposite. It has no clear-cut geographical or chronological boundaries. It's everywhere and all the time. Thus, a pandemic impacts society and individuals in a multiple foreseeable and unforeseeable ways, and that it precipitates further disasters and crises during and following its existence. It stresses, I believe, the fabric of our society in even greater fashion than a local acute disaster. A pandemic negatively impacts everyone, and in one way or another, and notwithstanding whether or not one becomes ill. Our pandemic is negatively impacting us economically. It's negatively impacting us socially, physically, and emotionally. This particular slide I acquired in October, and it compares the pandemic to other deadly events. Note that as of October 6th, last fall, 210,000 deaths. Now we have over 500,000 deaths since October. It's rapidly approaching to be the most deadly event in our history, American history, not necessarily world history. There are individual and societal maladaptive reactions to, in particular, to long-term diffuse disasters like we are experiencing. Frankly, it's to be expected that a portion of those impacted by such a prolonged diffuse disaster as we're experiencing, both citizens and governmental leaders, local, state, and federal, will inappropriately use denial, use magical thinking, and displaced aggression in a maladaptive attempt to deal with this heightened emotional stress that we're all experiencing. As one of my professors used to say, denial is not just a river in Egypt. And we see such reaction nationwide with the debate regarding the use of face masks, the debate about the worth of the scientific method, the debate about vaccines, debate about whether or not there really is a pandemic. The question we as MRC volunteers face is how we can individually as well as institutionally more positively impact both our volunteers as well as those citizens we serve. In my opinion, the prolonged diffuse disaster we're experiencing will only get worse and will last for the foreseeable future, at least until the vaccines are proved effective and the vast majority of we 329 million Americans are vaccinated. And then we have to deal with the various variants. So, as a prudent disaster behavioral health specialist, I believe we should prepare ourselves, our families, and our communities to deal with this ongoing prolonged stress of a pandemic that could last years. In other words, don't wait until the horses have escaped the barn before we close the barn doors. Welcome to Stress First Aid Training. Stress First Aid is a set of supportive actions designed to help you with self-care and with peer support and dealing with citizens as you volunteer, particularly at pods, to mitigate the negative impact of stress. SFA is a framework to improve recovery from stress reactions, both in oneself and in peers. It's based on research supporting the value of key elements that are related to recovery from different types of ongoing adversity. The framework aims to support and validate good friendship, mentorship, and leadership actions. The potential strategies identified within each element were derived via different work with people from the military, from fire and rescue, and law enforcement and healthcare. Stress first aid fosters longevity on the job in potentially stressful work environments. It has the value of reducing the impact of stress and it translating into a stronger workforce, less turnover, more productivity, less likelihood of employees, volunteers leaving the job prematurely. SFA can also reduce the stigma by changing culture. When it becomes part of training from the start of a career or the start of volunteering, acknowledgement of stress and stress reactions becomes a matter of fact, common sense approach that reduces stigma. SFA creates a common language with which to discuss stress and stress reaction in an efficient way. SFA addresses stress reactions before they create larger problems that can derail health and relationships or a career. Flexibility and tiny steps are emphasized in stress first aid. It should always be tailored in a flexible way to fit your personality and style, as well as your capacity to help others in any given moment. It should look different for each person who implements it and within each context it's implemented within. The timing and context are important to how one uses SFA. What you can achieve with any interaction depends on many factors, such as how open a person is to hearing what you have to say, how long after the incident the conversation takes place, how much time you have, etc. Mentoring and problem solving are highlighted. Your role may be to provide immediate support and possible assistance, either verbally or through your actions, to someone reacting to overwhelming stress in a highly stressful moment. Or you may need to help a peer problem solve and manage tasks that seem overwhelming to them when they've been under significant stress for an extended period of time. Remember, though, that stress first aid is not meant to address all ranges of issues. It's a first aid model, and it's not designed to deal with lifelong problems, personality issues, serious mental health issues, or extremely complex problems that require more intensive long-term interventions. Bridging to higher care is recommended when indicated. Always think in terms of referring a person on to an employee assistance program or a mental health provider or other professional if they're having difficulty adjusting and are experiencing disabling or persistent stress reactions. Effective short-term treatments are available. Being a bridge to that type of care may be the most important SFA action you can take. The stress continuum model. This model was developed as a visual tool for assessing an individual's stress experiences, zones of stress, and stress responses. It forms the foundation of stress first aid. It also indicates that 4 possible types of stress: injury, trauma, loss, interconflict or moral injury, and long-term chronic stress or wear and tear might move a person from the yellow zone of stress to the orange or the red zones. You see, stress responses lie along a spectrum of severity and type, from transient and mild to chronic and debilitating. The continuum has 4 zones: ready, green; reacting, yellow; injured, orange; and ill, red. It's important to note that 100% of people will react when faced with significant stressful experiences. However, the way in which they respond will depend on many factors, including how prepared they are for the stressor and how they interpret it. A person's reaction can range relatively rapidly from green to yellow to orange to red and back again. Now, stress first aid was adapted from the Navy Marine Corps Combat Operational Stress First Aid. It was developed as a visual tool for assessing an individual's stress responses and forms the foundation for both COSFA and SFA. It was also designed to reduce stigma by showing that people can go in and out of ranges of stress reactions frequently based on a variety of factors. This model acknowledges that within this range of reactions to stress, a person can go from being in optimal functioning, feeling good, mentally and physically fit, mission focused, calm, and motivated, into what's called the yellow zone. In the yellow zone, a person can feel more irritable, anxious, or down, have a loss of motivation, a loss of focus, have trouble sleeping, or have muscle tension or other physical changes. But these are transient reactions in the yellow reacting zone. Movement into the orange zone is usually caused by an accumulation of different types of stressors or a pretty severe stressor that happens right now. In the orange zone, you start to see more severe and persistent distress or impairment. The person doesn't feel like themselves or they have a loss of control of their stress reactions. They might feel strong panic or depression, rage, guilt, or blame. In this zone, it starts to feel like the stress leaves a scar and the person is at high risk for having trouble functioning and strong or persistent distress. The red zone is usually reserved for diagnoses like PTSD, depression, anxiety, or substance abuse. What signifies a person being in the red zone is that their symptoms are very persistent or worsen over time. The person experiences severe distress or has significant difficulty functioning at work or in their home life. The stress first aid model was designed to help people move themselves or their peers or citizens they're working with from the red and orange zones back to the yellow or green zones. You see, the ethos of many high stress work cultures has been that after a difficult event, one should be able to tough it out. For 20 years, I had a contract working with the Oklahoma City Police Department and later with the Oklahoma Bureau of Investigation. And anybody who's worked with LEOs, law enforcement officers, the idea of toughing it out, as you know, is ingrained. It's an unfortunate situation in many cases. It's usually not possible to keep these behaviors hidden for long, though, particularly from family members, peers, and friends. When a peer recognizes that someone is in trouble, it's important to try to assist in some way. Getting this individual connected with the next level of help as soon as possible may help prevent their reaction from progressing into the red zone. And once an individual has moved into the red zone, the goal is to help them into treatment as soon as possible. Stress first aid is based on research that says that people tend to do better in ongoing stressful circumstances when they have one or more of five essential elements to counteract the adversity. Those elements are one, being able to move towards a greater feeling of safety. Two, being able to calm themselves. Three, feeling connected to others. Four, feeling that they'll be able to get through what they're having to deal with, that they have the ability, the sense of self-efficacy. And five, having a sense of optimism, faith, or hope. Stress first aid maps into these five elements and adds two more core actions. because it's a long-term model designed to help support oneself and one's peers. The stress first aid model is initiated when a person experiences one or more stressful circumstances, which can occur either at work or in the person's personal life. It's different from models like critical incident stress management or critical incident stress debriefing in that stress first aid is only initiated if the person is showing evidence of experiencing stress reactions, if they have moved out of that green zone. It's also different because the stressors could occur at home and only be detected by family members or friends. Checking in with self or others has been added to the 5 essential elements. Check, assess, Oscar. It involves observing, paying attention, and checking in on one's peers on a regular basis. Checking yourself so that you know their and your baseline functioning and behavior and can therefore see stress-induced changes in behavior or functioning. This action should be ongoing and continuous, occurring even before stressors or reactions appear. In high-stress jobs, everyone should be checking on the well-being of themselves and peers regularly in order to intervene early in stress reactions. Coordinate has also been added to the 5 essential elements. Coordinate serves as a reminder that this is a first aid model and includes bridging people to higher care as needed. This action should also be continuous. It involves always being aware of additional resources that you may need to access yourself or share with a peer if your SFA actions don't sufficiently alleviate stress reactions. Once stressors provoke distress or loss of functioning, there are 5 core SFA actions that should be considered. Cover. That maps onto helping a person feel safer. Calm involves calming the person down or staying calm through an extended difficult experience. Training the individual on how to calm themselves. Connect. Connect involves helping a person feel a greater sense of connection to others. This is important because when people go into the orange zone, they often isolate themselves from others and lessening the possibility of social support. Making connections with others has been shown to be very helpful in recovery from many different types of stress. Competence, what we're going to be talking about today, involves helping a person feel more capable in a number of ways, including feel more capable to perform their duties at work, feeling more capable to handle their own stress reactions, or feeling better able to function and recover from stressful situations. Finally, confidence, another core action we're going to be talking about today, maps onto helping people having more confidence in themselves, more confidence in their life, their work mission, or leadership. It can also sometimes involve helping people reduce guilt or anger, or helping them make meaning or grapple with philosophical questions that arise as a result of the stressors in their life. Now, this diagram makes it seem like these actions are sequential, but in actuality, check and coordinate are continuous, should be happening all the time. And the others are only used when needed. It's not sequential. The goal of SFA is to move people toward wellness. Now, there are 7 core actions. I just went over them. But remember this, that each core action is made up of 3 components. Contact. Contact explains how to establish a partnership with the person in crisis through respect and compassion, how to approach them. Question explains what data to collect and how to manage that process, how to question the person you've made contact with. And then act describes how to deliver that information in a way that makes it likely the person will accept it and comply. How to develop an action plan and persuade the person to utilize it. There are essential SFA skills that all core actions require. First, paying more attention to signs of stress reaction in oneself and one's peers. Recognizing when stress reactions are in the orange or red zone of the stress continuum. Acting early on in response to your own or a peer's stress. If you see something, do something, either for yourself or for the peer. Or you may need to say something to the person themselves or to somebody they trust. And lastly, knowing at least two resources that you would either access yourself or offer to a peer in distress. It's helpful to know a range of both organizational and community resources. For example, do you know the closest community mental health center in your community? Remember that SFA is both a peer support and a self-care model that can be used to support peers and to increase your own self-awareness and improve your early response to stressors in your life. So how can you use SFA? Remember the 7 core actions. The first 2 are continuous. You should always be checking, and you should always know at least 2 resources for bridging if required. That leaves 5 other core actions. The stress first aid framework of possible actions was designed to be flexible. Now here's an example of how SFA can be used in peer support. Now ideally what you would do ahead of any SFA action is to, as I've said, pay attention and be aware of what's happening, either in a highly stressful moment or in a person's ongoing circumstance. The minute you step in a pod as a volunteer or as a citizen to be inoculated, you're stepping into a stressful situation. Paying attention in this way allows you to see changes in the way that the person is reacting or functioning that would indicate that they are stressed. Then you would either act to mitigate stressful circumstances in the moment or approach the person and together decide what they most need at that time. These choices are usually based on what type of stress reaction they're having. Here are the most typical stress reactions. Each one of these stress reactions could be handled differently depending upon your personality, depending upon what's going on in the moment or in the person's life, and what they're most likely to respond to or be able to tolerate, or what makes the most sense. This model allows you to be both practical and creative, depending upon many factors, and should look different with each exchange that you have with a peer or a citizen. It's not a one-size-fits-all model. That can make it challenging to use for some people because there is no one prescribed set of actions. But the hope is that it gives people permission to use the model in a way that makes the most sense to their role and personality, and the roles and personality of their peers, as well as the specific situation at hand. So, for example, let's say you're working with a peer and they are demonstrating anxiety. Well, what core action might be appropriate? Calm. The calm core action might be appropriate, but also a cover core action might be appropriate, or a combination. Thirdly, a competence core action could be work with anxiety. And with these other reactions, we have other core actions that might be appropriate. For example, let's take a look at isolation. Using a core action connect and a particular tool from that core action could be appropriate, or confidence. Now, let me just say that what we're going to be talking about today, the core action competence and confidence, are core actions which, to a significant degree, would be utilized with the person that you have some modicum of relationship. To give an example of working at a pod, let's say that you have, working with somebody all day or having volunteered for that pod, and maybe developing a brief relationship over time with somebody that another volunteer, is quite different, let's say, than a citizen coming in and you only get to meet them for a few minutes. In other words, a competence or confidence action, as we'll see, would be probably more appropriately used with a peer in that setting as opposed to a citizen, because you've had a greater established time with them. But you'll note that as we go through this today. Core action 6, competence. Competence focuses on enhancing and restoring an individual's capacity to function and perform in all important life roles, both occupational and personal domains. Building job experience or competence can reduce the risk for stress reactions. Additionally, orange or red zone stress reactions might require competence in social or well-being skills. This SFA action focuses on building or fostering skills that will either prevent or reduce stress reactions. We know from the research literature that increasing competence, 1, improves functioning and fosters better connections and supports, as well as augmenting individual and group morale. 2, it reestablishes the confidence of others in a stressed individual. 3, it helps to overcome injury to mind, body, and spirit. And lastly, it builds resilience. So the first component is to augment occupational skills that either have contributed to stress reaction or that may have been damaged by stress injury. This may require mentoring or training for the person to feel more capable in specific job-related skills, or to once again gain self-esteem from their work after a loss of ability due to stress reaction. Just as physical therapy aids in rehabilitation of physical injury, mentoring and training can help restore earlier functioning. Think about how that might be applied in a pod, particularly if somebody's never worked in a pod. The next component involves increasing well-being skills. Well-being skills that can help the person deal with stress reactions, such as helping them gain skills in calming themselves, problem solving, improving their own health, managing trauma and loss reminders. The last component of competence is to improve the social skills needed to deal with stress reactions. These skills, such as assertiveness, conflict resolution, and help seeking, are often damaged by stress, yet they may become necessary when a person is dealing with stress reactions. Competence involves either helping a person to be more skilled with specific requirements on the job so they cause less stress, or to become more competent at handling their own stress reaction. There are many actions that could help with both types. Things like giving the person extra training or mentoring in tasks that are causing them to feel stressed. Asking the person to tell you what they usually do to help calm down, and then suggesting that they do that. Reminding them about strategies and skills that have helped them in the past. Encouraging or helping them to actively cope with the things that are causing them stress. Helping them to recalibrate goals and expectations that are contributing to their stress. Helping them problem solve simple steps towards solutions to the things that are bothering them most. Connecting them to community resources such as chaplains, EAP, peer support, or other mentors who can help them feel that they can better handle these stressors. Okay, let's delve into more detail, a competence action that could be utilized, and it's called problem solving. We're going to look at a couple of ways, two ways that this particular tool can be understood and utilized. As I said earlier, a tool like this would be something you would utilize with a individual, a peer, a friend, a coworker who you have some relationship with, as opposed to a citizen in a pod, which you only have a 5-minute interaction. So let's take a look at this problem solving. Problem solving is a tool. It's just like a hammer or a saw. You want to break down overwhelming sets of problems into chunks. These chunks which can be tackled in a more readily easy manner. There are 4 steps to this particular tool. You first want to define the problem and decide ownership. More about that in a minute. You want to set the goal. You want to brainstorm. And then you evaluate and choose the best solution. You probably are thinking, well, problem solving, well, my mom and dad taught me to problem solve. I know how to problem solve. Well, what's important is following all the steps. It's easy to cut corners. It can feel artificial at first to walk the target person through the steps. But it's important. The evidence supports that problem solving used as a formal technique, going through all the steps does have a significant impact. Thus, it takes confidence to be more directive and structured about this type of counseling. So, here's some example wording that you could use to begin this technique. Today, I'm going to teach you a simple way that you can use to tackle any problem that you want. We're going to tackle your problem with anxiety using these steps. So you have an idea how it works. So we'll come up with some possible things you can do to work on that problem. And at the same time, you'll be learning a tool that you can use for other types of problems that you're facing. Does that make sense? Do you have any questions? Then you can go on and say something like this. Okay, the steps are first to define the problem, second to set the goal, third we got to brainstorm, and fourth we evaluate and choose the best solution. So step one, defining the problem. So what's bothering you most right now? How often does that happen? Who's involved? How does it make you feel? How does it impact you? Another technique is called Q-sort. Very simple technique. You take index cards and you put down the different problems and you just ask the person to sort the cards from high to low as the ones that are most bothersome. One of the problems that you need to look out for when you're defining the problem is how specific does the problem need to be? You know, person say, well, I need to get my life together again. Well, that's just, frankly, too broad, not specific enough. As opposed to maybe improve my finances or decide where to live might be specific enough to focus upon. Another issue to be aware of when using problem solving with a target person is to be sure to define ownership. Is the problem that they enumerate, is it something happening between them and someone else? Or is this problem mainly happening to someone else or between other people? Let me give you an example. A person may be saying, well, you know, I have a problem with my mother. Okay. That's different than I got a problem because my mother and father are getting a divorce. Well, there's something that you can do in terms of developing a problem solving scheme between the mother and the target person, but the problem between mother and father, that's their problem. They have, and it's not owned by the target person you're talking to. So, step two, set the goal. Have the target person clearly specify the need in a concrete way. The end state should be something that is possible for the person to accomplish. Break down complex problems into smaller chunks. Let's take a look at some sample wording. So often what seems like a big problem can be broken down into smaller problems that are easier to solve. Also, the idea is to stay focused on one problem at a time. So when problem solving, it's very easy to get into other problems. Let's not do that. We can deal with another problem later in the same way. Step three, brainstorming. Have the target person identify different solutions and write them down. If the person is having difficulty identifying solutions, ask how someone else would handle the problem, particularly someone that they respect. After the list is generated, have the target person identify the potential consequences of each solution. Now, there's a brainstorming pitfall we all have to be aware of, and that is the definition of solution. So much of the time, people, and myself included, a solution is when we totally solve the problem. Very rarely is that able to be accomplished. It's more realistic to find ways to improve the situation in small ways that count. Well, what are some examples of this latter, more realistic definition of solution? Well, learning ways of calming oneself or taking actions on parts of the problem that are controllable. Learning helpful things to say to oneself if that's an issue. Finding solutions that extend or build on things that are already helping. Learning new skills for difficult situations. Getting help, support from other people, getting additional services. When developing solutions, look at social support. Social support is so important in post-disaster, post-crisis recovery. The list should always include actions that will enable or enhance social support. Ask the target person to generate ideas that might involve seeking support or finding supportive situations or environments. When do you stop brainstorming? Well, when you got at least 10 ideas and there are several practical or useful ideas on the list, or you've run dry of ideas. Step 4, you want to evaluate and choose the best solution. How do you do that? Well, you have the target person rate each solution with pluses and minuses. You briefly discuss potential consequences, and then you have the person identify the best solution. Let's take a look at some possible wording that you could use. Okay, now let's go back to the list of solutions and consequences and mark a plus or a minus for each. Pluses are for positive consequences that will help you achieve your goal, and minuses for negative consequences. You can get rid of any solution that doesn't seem helpful and pick a solution that seems reasonable and that you think might help. You're working towards agreeing on an action plan. So, as the last part of choosing the best solution, you want to identify practical ways to activate the plan. You want to identify individuals the target person can enlist for help to activate the plan. And of course, you want to give them praise for coming up with the plan. You encourage the target person to take relatively small steps and not make an unrealistic commitment. As the counselor, you have an important role in helping shape the choices. The target person should be able to succeed in follow through. That's thus you want to think about, do they have a 70% chance of success? Because you want to build on success through what's called successive approximation. You assist them in choosing options that appear practical and achievable. Now, you want to review the action plan's efforts about a week or so later. And you look for successes. And you reward any kind of baby steps you've seen. But you confront lack of follow through if you note that. You encourage generalization to new problem situations. You ask them to practice and report back. When reviewing, you ask what worked, what didn't work. You take that information and you review the action plan. It's not surprising that you will see lack of follow through. You have to assess what went wrong. Was there buy-in from the target person? What obstacles did you note? Be sure to reward any effort to apply problem solving. Okay, that is in detail one problem solving technique that comes from the tool called Skills for Psychological Recovery. I want to show you another example of problem solving that's very similar from a tool called PTSD Coach Online. Now, give me a moment because I'm going to have to stop share, bring up the internet, etc., etc. That shouldn't, hopefully, I practice this and we'll be able to do it. So, Teresa, did it come up?
Yes.
Good. Now, guys and gals, this tool is super cool. Okay? It's called PTSD Coach Online. Now, what's cool about it before I get into the specifics of the problem solving skills is that it provides you with a multitude of tools that you can use for the different reactions, stress reactions that we've been talking about. So, for example, let's say you had a issue or the person you're working with has an issue with worry or anxiety. You go to worry and anxiety, and it gives you all these different tools. That's what's cool about this. Sadness or hopelessness, trauma reminders, we talked about that last time. Disconnection from people, we've talked about that, okay, etc. This PTSD Coach Online was developed by the National Center for PTSD, which is a government agency of the VA, and especially designed for, combat veterans who have suffered trauma. Okay, let's take a look at problem-solving skills. They're providing us 3 different tools. Well, let's take a look at the tool I wanted to show you today, learning to problem solve.
We all face problems that we have to solve. Learn to problem solve gives you a step-by-step approach to tackling these problems. It might seem that some people are just better problem solvers than others, but it is a skill that can be learned and improved. And by practicing the problem solving skills in everyday situations, you can more easily draw on them under stressful situations.
Let's go through this. This tool has 5 steps. Define the problem, identify the barriers, think of possible solutions, make a decision, define action steps. Quite similar to what I've just described from Skills for Psychological Recovery. Think about how cool this could be used with a colleague or a peer. You could use this from your phone if you had like a smartphone or an iPad.
Learn to problem solve teaches you a step-by-step way to tackle the problems life throws at you. Let me walk you through how it works before you use the tool on your own. There are 5 steps in the problem-solving process. Define the problem, identify barriers to solving the problem, think of solutions, make a decision, and come up with a success plan. To start, we need to define the problem area. Let's pick issues with living situation. Then we need to state a more specific problem. So let's write that the specific problem is, my apartment is a mess because my roommates are slobs. Now write about the change you'd like to see, being as specific as you can. That's easy. I want my roommates to shape up so that we can have a clean apartment. Next, list the barriers you're facing. My roommates are slobs. We're all really busy. Cleaning is a chore no one else wants to do. Great. Now you need to brainstorm solutions. And the more solutions you come up with, the better your chances of finding a good one. So here are some solutions. Move out. Get new roommates. Set up a schedule and assignments for keeping the place clean. Make my roommates feel guilty about their mess. And hire a cleaning service. Next, you need to weigh the pros and cons of the decisions. Let's start with the idea of getting a cleaning service. So for pros, how about we won't have to do the work? The person cleaning will be skilled at that job. And I won't have to argue with my roommates about whose turn it is to clean. For the cons, it adds another expense along with rent and cable and internet. And my roommates might not pay their share. Continue like this with the other solutions you come up with. Seeing all those pros and cons should make it easier for you to choose the solution that is right for you. It might be the solution that's most cost-effective, or the quickest, or that has the most support from important people in your life. All right, now you need to come up with a success plan. There are specific, concrete steps to solve your problem. In our example of hiring a cleaning service, these are: talk to my roommates about splitting the cost of a service, get recommendations about services from friends, call a couple of services for quotes, and hire a service on a trial basis to see how we like it. After all that hard work, there's still one more step. Decide how you'll know your plan has worked. Think about how life will be different once you've succeeded. For our example, the apartment is cleaned on a regular basis, and now I'm not disgusted every time I step in the kitchen. And now it's your turn. I hope learn to problem solve, make solving problems and improving your situation easier.
Very good. Okay, now I'm going to stop sharing and back out and come back into the PowerPoint. Okay, that is a more detail or another aspect of problem solving, and it is very handy, and it also demonstrates this tool, which probably not many of you have seen, which I think fits beautifully with SFA and can be utilized almost anywhere that you have your iPhone or your Android or an iPad or computer. So now we are looking at the last core action, confidence. The final SFA action is confidence, originally derived from research on hope. Now, there's a lot of overlap between competence and confidence, because when individuals feel more competent to handle what is in front of them, they usually feel more confident and hopeful. What distinguishes competence from confidence is that competence actions involve training or mentoring in skill building, whereas confidence actions are aimed at affecting or altering inner states or thoughts that a stressed individual may be having. Let me say that again. What distinguishes competence from confidence is that competence actions often involve training or mentoring in skill building. And that's why that problem solving tool is so key to competence work, whereas confidence actions are aimed at affecting or altering inner states, thoughts, mental processes, feelings that a stressed person may be having. So confidence actions are intended to promote realistic hope and build self-esteem that may have been damaged or lost as a result of stress. promote confidence in core values and beliefs, and bolster pride and commitment. This slide will show 4 components of confidence. The first confidence component is rebuilding trust in peers, equipment leaders, self, or mission. The second component is rebuilding hope, which can often be done through forgiving oneself or others or imagining a hopeful future. The third component is aimed at rebuilding self-worth, which includes belief in self, an accurate and mostly positive self-image, self-respect, and awareness of the steps necessary to begin to achieve priorities and goals. The fourth component is aimed at rebuilding or facilitating meaning making, which includes the process of making sense of life, having a feeling of purpose or faith, holding a spiritual perspective related to life, or a belief in a strong others or a higher power who will intervene on the person's behalf. All of these functions lead to a better sense of hope or confidence in self, others, life, or spiritual sources of solace. Confidence involves helping a person feel more hope or confidence in themselves, work, leadership, or life. It's often only in conversations with trusted or respected peers that a person can rebuild confidence. Therefore, taking the time to build confidence in a peer can have a big impact on their life if done well. As with other SFA actions, depending on the context, your relationship, and your personalities, there are many potential ways to help a person rebuild confidence, such as 1, helping a person feel more confident in themselves by pointing out what they're good at, or telling them that what they're experiencing is expectable and understandable given the circumstances, helping them honor or make meaning of a loss, helping them see the way that they're viewing the world or themselves differently, encouraging them to find better ways to cope, avoiding judging them yourself and helping them reduce their guilt about their own actions if they feel responsible for something that has happened, reducing rumors or misunderstandings that others have about the person, or distortions that the person holds that negatively affect their self-esteem or ability to cope. A confidence action, helpful thinking. So, like problem solving, helpful thinking is a more detailed technique, which we're going to go through, to help a target person develop a greater feeling of confidence. The rationale for helpful thinking and utilizing this tool: thoughts about self and events shape how we feel and act. Distressing, disaster, crisis-related thoughts can maintain negative emotions. We can change focus of thoughts to those that make us feel hopeful and less overwhelmed. Focus on helpful thoughts improves mood and paves the way for more effective coping. So, the goals of helpful thinking are to help the target person take a look at their disaster, crisis-related thoughts and how these affect feeling and behavior. Identify and practice healthy ways of thinking about the disaster, crisis-related experiences. This whole concept comes from cognitive behavior therapy, the idea that it's what we say to ourselves that triggers how we feel and behave, rather than how we behave that triggers what we say to ourselves. All of us do self-talk. Right now, each one of you is talking to yourself inside your head. Is it helpful, positive, or negative? Now, helpful thinking, this tool, is not the same as positive thinking. You know that concept of, that you see on TV or reading books, be a positive thinker? Helpful thinking is not that. Why? How? Because, frankly, positive thinking is too simplistic. The negative thoughts we have may be accurate. For example, COVID-19 pandemic really is a bad thing. I can't think of one good thing about COVID-19. I can't think of a positive thought about COVID-19. The steps of helpful thinking. Well, you explain the rationale for promoting helpful thinking like I've just done with you guys. You identify unhelpful thoughts. You identify helpful thoughts. You rehearse the helpful thoughts by assigning practice. So step one, you explain the rationale. How we think about ourselves and the things that have happened to us shape how we feel and act. Focusing on helpful ways of thinking can improve mood and adaptive coping. What's an unhelpful thought? A thought is unhelpful if it makes it more difficult to deal with the situation by increasing feelings of being overwhelmed or hopeless. That is the operational definition of an unhelpful thought. Now, don't debate with the target person on whether or not their thoughts are justifiable. Their thoughts might be realistic and justifiable. The COVID-19 pandemic really is bad. People really are dying. However, thinking about that and becoming overwhelmed is not helpful. So, how do we identify unhelpful thoughts? You use questions. What's been bothering you the most since the crisis? What goes through your mind when you think about the crisis in your current situation? What are you most afraid of nowadays? What makes you feel the worst about yourself or about how your life is going? You ask these questions. You link the thoughts with emotions. Once the unhelpful thoughts are described, help identify the emotions that go with those thoughts. Ask, how do you feel about yourself or your situation when you have that thought? Ask, what happens to your energy level when you think these thoughts? Identify, clarify, and write down alternative helpful thoughts. That's step three. If the target person can't generate their own, you, the counselor, the friend, the peer, the family member, may have to suggest some helpful thoughts. As helpful thoughts are generated, take time to discuss the positive feelings that are associated with each. Again, we're being meticulous. We're not cutting corners. We're using a pen or pencil and paper, making notes and showing and sharing them. Developing helpful thoughts, you think about the unhelpful thoughts we have identified. For example, let's say the thought is, I should have prevented this, whatever it is. And ask, what are helpful alternative thoughts? What feelings do you think might go along with these alternative thoughts? Step four, you want to urge the individual to rehearse those helpful thoughts. Have the target person practice focusing on these new realistic thoughts instead of unhelpful thoughts. Briefly discuss the situations in which the unhelpful thoughts occur most often. Have the target person picture some of these situations and practice saying the helpful thoughts out loud as a way to counter the negative thoughts. Step 5. Assign practice. Tell the target person that the key to helpful thinking is to rehearse these thoughts during daily activities and to look at using these helpful thoughts mobilize and energize me. Are these alternative thoughts, are they realistic or not? And a few days later, a week or so later, you want to review with the target person how they've been doing. Did the person identify helpful thoughts? What happened? Did they practice using the helpful thoughts as an alternative? Look for successes. Again, reward baby steps, the idea of successive approximation. But on the other hand, you want to confront lack of follow through. Review the rationale and reassign practice. So, how can you confront lack of follow through? Well, you use the concept of the payoff matrix to understand the resistance. Well, what is the payoff matrix? Basically, you take a piece of paper and you draw a line down the middle of it, perpendicular, and you draw another line down across the middle of it, horizontal, and you have 4 equal areas. And you ask, what are the advantages of holding on to the thought that you've been holding on? And you write those down. What are the disadvantages of holding on to that thought? You write those down. What are the advantages of adopting a new thought? What are the disadvantages of adopting the new thought? And you have a discussion about the information that comes through this payoff matrix, trying to understand their resistance to change. Helpful thinking. This particular detailed tool, again, is quite useful. Be meticulous in its use when working with a peer, a friend, co-worker that you have some relationship with. Obviously, not particularly appropriate for a few-minute interaction with a citizen at a pod. Let me just state, though, that we are putting these trainings on the SRT Inc. YouTube channel. And on that channel, there is a 53-minute presentation that I've designed that deals with using SFA in pods. And I do give some unique examples of how you might use competence and confidence, core action, with a citizen. And feel free to view that 53-minute presentation and to share that website with other co-workers and other volunteers. Now, let's go back to PTSD Coach Online and look at how they utilize the concept of helpful thinking, which they call look carefully at your thoughts.
We all have times when we feel bad. You might feel sad or angry or ashamed of something that you did. And you might tell yourself that it's time to get over it, that you should start feeling better. But often telling yourself to feel better isn't enough to actually make you feel better. But because our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are all connected, another way that you can make yourself feel better is to identify the thought that you're having. And if you can change the thought, you might be able to change how you're feeling. PTSD Coach Online has several tools that will help you examine your thoughts. But first, you have to know what you're thinking. And for a lot of people, it's easier to know what you're feeling than what you're thinking. So we'll focus on 4 feeling states: fear and anxiety, sadness, guilt and shame, and anger. And we'll learn what are some of the common thoughts that are related to each of those 4 feeling states. Then you'll be able to identify your negative thoughts and work on them in other tools. We all have thoughts constantly running through our minds, also known as self-talk. If you stop a moment and look at the thoughts, you might notice things about them, like how they're usually negative or positive or related to worries or guilt. Our thoughts are closely connected to our feelings and how we act. And different thoughts can lead to very different feelings and behaviors. Sometimes you're not even aware of the thought you're having. They're automatic, so it's important to learn how to identify them. So why is it that 2 people look at the same situation differently? It's our life experiences that shape our thoughts and beliefs about ourselves, about others, and about the world. If you've lived through traumatic events, you may develop thoughts that might have been accurate at one point in time, but aren't accurate over the long term. A child who was abused might think the world isn't safe, or a person who's been in a car accident might think it's unsafe to drive, but in fact, these thoughts may no longer be accurate. Changing inaccurate or unhelpful thoughts can lead to relief from anxiety and depression and other PTSD symptoms. Now we're going to look more carefully at your thoughts and feelings. It's usually easier to identify how you feel than what you're thinking. So we'll learn to focus on the 4 basic feelings: fear and anxiety, sadness, guilt and shame, and anger. We know that certain thoughts are related to each of these feelings. For example, fear is usually driven by the thought that you're in danger or that something bad will happen.
And at this point, you would begin to write down various things that precipitate the kind of feeling that you've been experiencing. I'll back out of this right now. I can't say enough positive about PTSD Coach Online and how it fits hand in glove with Stress First Aid. I'm going to now go back through Stop Share and back to the PowerPoint. Okay. That concludes our discussion of confidence. We have, in the 3 sessions, part 1, part 2, and part 3, gone into detail about each of the 7 core actions, and I have provided specific detailed examples of techniques that you can utilize, as well as shown you PTSD Coach Online, other sources of techniques that can be applied. So let's have some fun. Quiz time. And Teresa is going to help with this.
Dr. Call, do you want to do some question and answers before we get into that?
Well, sure. I was going to do them afterwards, but let's go ahead and do them ahead of time. And we could also do them afterwards. So go right ahead.
Okay, so something that I have seen a few of you write is how do you get access to all of the offerings? And those will be available. We are recording this, so the recordings will be available after the fact. You'll be able to register through the OKMRC website and get all three options. So if you missed any of them, don't worry, you'll be able to go back and get them later. I did just put a note in the chat as well that if you previously did not register through the OKMRC website, please do so, because that helps us track the numbers of people, and it helps us track for CE purposes as well. So if you just came on today, then that's great, but please go back and register in the OKMRC website. Additionally, if we have issues like what we're seeing with the Oklahoma Department of Mental Health with the CE, I'm still trying to get that worked out, but if we have updates, if you're registered in the MRC website, then I can send you an email with the information that you will need. Otherwise, I have no idea how to reach you. So make sure that if you did not register in the MRC website, go and register in the MRC website, and then there'll be information upcoming as to how to get the recordings and any other updated information about CE purposes.
Let me just say that what Teresa has described is the only way, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, Teresa, the only way to get CEU is to go through the process that she just described. If you do not need CEU, or you just want to have the information, I am putting these presentations on the SRT Inc. YouTube. And so therefore you could go, if you go back and to that YouTube station and view these presentations. But to get the CEU, you have to go through the process that Teresa described. Correct, Teresa?
Correct.
Okay.
So there is a question, does the SRT offer these type of talks to the community?
At the present time, we haven't done that. This presentation is, as far as I know, is open to anybody who knew about it. However, the stress response team is in the process, as we speak, of developing some new projects, particularly focused on this kind of virtual educational process. And one of those possibilities is providing this information to the community, designing it for a citizen to view. And if you got any ideas about that, feel free to email me about it.
Okay, does anyone have any other questions or comments, or? Does anyone feel like they'll be able to actually use this information in the course of either their work or their volunteer time at the pods, or with anything else through the MRC or through the health department or wherever you're volunteering?
I would just say definitely. This is Charlotte Burton. I'm a nurse. I've worked in multiple pods since January, and especially some of just even the calming techniques. But but all of the techniques, I'm really interested in kind of some of this more long-term ones with that we talked about today, but that would be, as we build other relationships.
Absolutely. There's a bunch of people commenting useful in a lot of realms, everyday use, just in life. Yeah, I agree. And something that we have discussed with some of in the other sessions is caregiver burnout or volunteer burnout. There are some of you that have been at every vaccine pod that the MRC has had. You are there 24/7, just about. And while that is great, and thank you for giving of your time and everything, but eventually there's a point where you're going to have some form of burnout if you're not taking care of yourself and you're not using these principles that Dr. Call has gone over with these 3 sessions. Have any of you started to feel anything like that? If any of you want to unmute yourself and just kind of talk.
This is Janet. Hi, Dr. Call.
Hi.
I talked last week, about when we were talking about what you do to help yourself, and I said I try and limit what I do and everything. But even in that, when people work with, work in our field every day, and then you add that extra stress on the end of the week, it can be really stressful. And trying to juggle everything in with it. And today, my mom called and she needs my help today. And I was trying to figure out, okay, if I hurry up and as soon as this session's over with, I can run over to my office, pick up this paperwork, go help my mom, and then get over to the pod and get all this done. And I was just literally, I couldn't breathe thinking about it. And so I thought, wait a minute. So I sent a message in and I said, I need to take care of my mom today. And, but it's being able to say no. And that's hard to do. That was very hard for me to do that.
One of the things that I, in my own life, I have been out of my home only 10 times in 1 year. I know that because I counted the number of masks, N95 masks I've used. And frankly, it's driving me crazy because I would spend approximately at least a third of the year traveling, 3 months out of the year traveling, either in the United States or on other continents. And that is extremely stressful. And, the idea that all that's, this whole pandemic and how it's impacting the world, impacting society, impacting government. It's like it's like I'm living in a science fiction novel, but it's real. And that's why I think it is so important for all of us to be very much in tune with this SFA. And I feel that that SFA is something that is really in particular needed. I think psychological first aid is important likewise, but psychological first aid is something that is more that you provide to others, whereas SFA has this omnibus impact for ourselves, our family, peers, neighbors, friends, citizens. It can be used everywhere.
Something I've noticed in the pods is in regards to the social isolation, when they get to come get their vaccine, it's like a vacation to them to be able to get out and socialize with others.
I understand that completely because it's now become a big thing in my life to go to Sam's or Costco.
Okay. Well, it looks like no one else has any questions or concerns. So let's go ahead and go into the post-test.
Okay, now guys, as we go through the quiz, I want normally if we were together, I would have people like, just kind of like shout out what they thought the answer was or is. And I want to try to do that here. So feel free to put it in chat or just to come on and unmute and do it that way as well. Okay. Then we'll discuss the correct answers as we go along.
Okay, so the stress continuum model was developed as a visual tool for assessing an individual's stress experiences. This model is made up of the following stages.
So what do people think? Anybody want to shout out?
A couple B's,
think
C's.
it's
Yeah, B.
Okay. B is correct. Ready, reacting, injured, ill. Green, yellow, orange, red. Okay. Let's take a look at number 2.
All right, stress first aid was adapted from what prior program?
C.
C is correct. Navy Marine Corps Combat Operational Stress First Aid Program. Yeah, as a Air Force guy, still a member of the Air Force Psychologists Association, I'm glad to see that some of the money that we spent and some of the work that we did is now helping our regular citizens. Question 3. Oops, there we go.
So the core actions of stress first aid are, what do you think?
C.
B.
C.
Yeah, you guys better come with that. Check, coordinate, cover, calm, connect, competence, and confidence. The 7 C's.
Okay. The essential SFA skill that all actions involve. What do you think?
D.
Mm-hmm.
What did I hear, Teresa?
D.
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 D is correct. Okay.
Okay,
5.
which of the items below is not a goal of the SFA core action check?
D, yeah.
Looks like D.
D is correct. Initiate suicide intervention would be a cover action.
The primary goal of the SFA core action calm is
C.
Yeah, it looks like C. Good.
That's correct. C. Safety is, more of a cover action. Learning how to problem solve is more of a competence core action. And increasing social interaction would be more of a connect core action.
Okay, which of the following is not an SFA connect action?
C.
C. Mm-hmm.
D.
Correct. C is something that should be happening all the time as a part of check. Nowadays, given the world we live in, we should be checking all the time.
A pandemic is what type of disaster?
C.
C.
That is correct.
What types of individual and societal maladaptive reactions might one expect as a consequence of living through a pandemic?
E.
E. Mhm.
Yeah. I thought that magical thinking the disease is caused by space lasers, and if you drink bleach, you'll be okay. I mean, and I've actually heard some people say stuff like that.
Grandkids are telling me that they're waiting to see how I react to the vaccination before they find out if I'm a zombie or not.
Mhm.
I've also heard that the use of chapstick and lighting a candle and leaving a candle burning in your home will keep the virus away as well.
That's a weird one. Okay, so last question. The SFA core action competence involves either helping a person, one, become more skilled with the specific requirements of their everyday life so they experience less stress, or two, become more competent at handling their stress reactions. Which of the following actions could help with both types of competence?
D.
Correct. D. Okay. Excellent. I hope everybody got them all right. I'm sure you did. So this person has completed part 3, 1, 2, and 3 of training, and I like this particular slide. Time for you to take charge. I mean, this person is she's decided she needs to take charge, and she's hiking down the road to do just that, and I'm really proud of her. So your next steps, if you're not a volunteer of the OKMRC or SRT, please volunteer. I think probably most of you are, or you wouldn't be here today. If you ever have any questions or any suggestions, you can email me at that email. And as I said last week, we have the stress response team has an informal communication method via Facebook. So if you use Facebook, not everybody does, you can get on Facebook and like John Call. There's a bunch of John Calls. This particular John Call has the an ambulance on the homepage. And if you like that John Call, then what I'll do is assign you to the closed Facebook page. Also, I would invite all of you to go to YouTube and search for the channel SRT, INC, period. And then subscribe to that channel. And we're developing playlists. We have one playlist for stress first aid, another playlist for PTSD. We're going to be expanding those playlists as we go on. It'll be quite hopefully helpful in providing direct access to what we believe to be appropriate training material for our Oklahoma volunteers. Teresa, tell us about this.
Okay, so there is an evaluation that we would like you to take as well. This will lead you to the contact hours at the end. So you can go ahead and click on that and open it and complete it in a few minutes, or if you want to go ahead and do that now. At the very end, it will tell you how to get CE credits. And again, I'm not exactly sure why the Oklahoma Department of Mental Health links are not linking up properly. But again, if you are registered through the OKMRC website, then as soon as that computer glitch is fixed, we will get the instructions for you to try again or to do something else. So again, I'm sorry for the mess up with that. I'm not exactly sure why their links aren't working. If you are a nurse, there's a certificate for you to enter your info in, and you can download it directly from the end of the evaluation. So if you can please, can any of you click it? Are you having any issues with opening the evaluation?
It wouldn't let me click on it, but I'm wondering if you could put that link in our chat.
Okay. Give me just a moment.
Talking about the evaluation, there's a couple of questions about asking you for ideas for further training. Think about that. I really want to gather your views about other types of training that you think would be helpful over the coming year, and because I want to be able to provide that if at all possible. So I'm very interested in you spending some time. So even if something comes to you a couple of days from now, a week or so from now, or next June, feel free to let us know what kind of further training would be helpful.
Okay, are you able to click on the link? Great.
Yes.
All right, perfect. And I did have a couple of questions about people wanting to make sure that how they signed up through the OKMRC website. So if you go to if you log in, you'll go to the main page, and on the bottom, like left-hand corner, there's a thing that says calendar. scroll down the calendar until you get to today's date, and you should be able to see the previous dates as well. You'll actually click on that link, and then you will register for Stress First Aid in those courses.
So Teresa, they'll have to go to register for each of the Fridays.
Well, so because, yeah, you're right, sorry. So the one that you'll register for today is still showing. Now, if you previously registered for the other ones, then you're fine. But you'll go down to today's date, which is the 26th of February, and you'll click on that and you'll get that information. And the link for that, once we get the Oklahoma Department of Mental Health link is active or working, or again, I'm not exactly sure what what the hang up is, but once that gets fixed, then you will be able to get your CE credit that way. For the future, these are being recorded and they will be available there will be information, and that's again why I need to have everybody register through the OKMRC website, so that when these are available online, I can send you the link to where to go to view them. So some of you sent messages saying that you weren't able to attend the previous sessions. So we will have them recorded and we will have them available. So, but in order to get that information to you, need to have you registered on the Oklahoma MRC website so that I can send you the link, because otherwise I don't have your contact information.
And if you wish to view, there'll be actually two places you can view, only one place where you can get CEU. You can go to SRT Inc. YouTube, and you'll be able to view, presently you'll be able to view part 2, and as soon as the recording's been processed, we'll put up part 3 on the YouTube channel. But again, that's going to be information only. I mean, it's the whole program, but you won't get CEU for it because it's not connected to the formal CEU sign up.
Okay. All right, any other questions?
Is there anywhere we can obtain the PowerPoint slides other than just watching the recording?
We had not talked about that, Dr. Call.
Yeah, well, we can, is that Debbie? Debbie,
Yes.
is that, okay.
Yes.
Okay, Teresa and I will talk about that, and she'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or concerns? We're good. Well, hopefully you found this helpful, and hopefully you can use these principles with your anywhere from everyday life, which a lot of us could use this in everyday life, but also for your work, for your volunteer time. Hopefully you can help share these concepts with other people that you may be working or volunteering with as well. But we really appreciate you taking your time out to attend these sessions. And we really appreciate you being volunteers for the Oklahoma MRC.
Thank you,
All right,
everyone.
thank you all.
Thanks so much.